All right, all right. Welcome to Slamuary. Thank you for coming out. This is going to be a discussion about drumming, and I got 6 of my favorite drummers and people I've known for a long time here to talk about it. So I'm just glad that you're here, and I'm glad that you're here. And so give it up one time for them. I'm going to let them introduce themselves in a second. So without further ado, I will pass the mic down and just introduce yourself and talk about maybe how you kind of like started drumming and started knowing and that's what you wanted to do.
Hello, my name is Corey Weinberg, and I play drums. I've been playing drums since I was 8 years old, and I've would bug my parents about it and like, oh, I think it's so cool, and like, I just want to try and play it. I wanted to learn an instrument, and like, I thought the drums was very powerful, so I gravitated towards that. And so they surprised me with a kit, and then I pursued from there, and I took lessons and went through like art school basically, but I didn't go to like college or university for music, but I pursued forward since high school by like practicing a lot or as much as I can. I mean, I go to just practice studios to play. And since high school, I was in a band called Numb Tongues, and I played with them for quite a long time. And I've also ventured out and played with other groups and tried to expand my musical vocabulary and trying different styles and just trying to see what I felt comfortable with. Because, like you gotta like explore yourself in music, and like you definitely need to branch out and try different styles and like see what you gravitate towards. But like also it's good to just have that in your back pocket just in case something gets called upon you, and like, oh, you need to learn some like bossa nova or like whatever it may be. And like, yeah, it's good to keep learning, basically. It's just never stop, because there's like, you can't really reach perfection. There's really no such thing as that, I think. But yeah, that's me right now. I'm gonna send it on to
John. What up, y'all? I'm John Katanis. I'm sort of a freelancer type of drummer here in the city of Toronto. I've always loved music ever since I was a baby. Like, my mom put me in like choir at church and stuff. And it's sort of, my love for music sort of spilled over onto other instruments. Like, I started learning piano at a very young age. And by the time I hit university, I was a piano major, but I felt tugged towards the drums mid-university, so I had to re-audition, but I was able to switch over to the drums in my 3rd year at York University, and went on to play in the big band for 2 years and just drunk up as much knowledge, and like, it's pretty anime, but like friendship, like with other drummers, because that's like the only place that you'll hang out with drummers, unless you play in a band with 2 drummers, like Kamasi Washington vibe. And yeah, it's I started, my first gig was at the Central. I don't know if y'all remember the Central. The poutine there was giving. Jazz poutine. And yeah, it just sort of snowballed. But the moment that I really knew that I wanted to pursue it was when I saw Chino Davila play at the 3030 on Dundas. He gave a workshop last week, and the piece there for me was the representation, because until that point I really hadn't seen too many Asians rock the drum set. I hadn't seen any like at that point. And then I met Victor Su at the Be It Zatoon at Syndicate Fest. It was like this math rock kind of type thing, and that also changed my perspective. So I've been pursuing my love of jazz and music in general, and it's sort of molded me into the person I am today, and I love music. I'm gonna pass it forward.
Hi everyone, my name is Vania. I started playing probably when I feel like a late bloomer. I started playing Chinese drums, actually in Toronto Chinese Orchestra, when I was probably around 10 years old. And I started to take classical percussion, I started doing middle school band really, but then I went to Earl Haig Secondary School for the Claude Watson Arts Program, and that's kind of where I started to take drum set more seriously, and they had sort of a jazz class, jazz band kind of thing there, and I remember seeing Julian actually play, because he's 2 years above me, and I remember seeing him in the it was the carp orchestra, carp thing, I don't know, something, and then the fish, yeah, I'm just very honored to be here because I have some inspirations in this line actually, but yeah, I pretty much took. Or I focused more on drum set in high school, and then I auditioned for the Humber program and got in, and yeah, I'm here now.
Hello, I'm Karah, and I play the drums, and I know this guy because we went to band camp a really long time ago, and I know this guy just from the scene. Don't do that, I need that. I know this guy from Humber College, and probably know some other people here, but just been around a little bit, here and there. I play in a band. I sing and play drums in a band called Valley, and yeah, I'm also very inspired by this lineup here and several people in the audience there. Matt, I see you. And yeah, thanks for letting me talk about things that you guys probably already know, but appreciate it.
Hello, I'm Julian Psihogios. I play drums. Yeah, I would say my drumming journey kind of began at the beginning of my life. I feel I've always just loved music with a passion, something I could never explain. And I played a little bit of other instruments growing up, but then it was in grade 7 when my band teacher was like, "Here, play clarinet." And I was like, "Can I play drums? Is that a thing?" She was like, "Yeah." And then I sat down and I was like, "Oh, this is maybe the funnest thing I've ever done." And somehow have continued to just have fun every day playing drums. Again, also very inspired by all of these people on stage and many of these people in the audience here. God bless, yeah.
Hello, I'm David, and I'm also a drummer. And yeah, I feel similar to Julian, I kind of came out loving drums, yeah. Just loving music, and so yeah, I got into drums pretty early, but mostly just to calm down my ADD, really. I just wanted to slam some drums. But yeah, then I went to an art school and got more into it and went to Humber College. I did the Berkeley 5-week program for anybody who's like young enough to do that here. It's an amazing program. And that's where I really kind of found that I wanted to pursue it. And yeah, after Humber, I just started doing a lot of touring with pop artists. And now I'm doing a lot of musical directing for artists. So yeah, that's me.
I guess we'll just like pass it down again. Does anybody have any questions at all that they would like to ask at this point?
Another question for David.
Yo.
What was the most difficult thing being the drummer and the MD for an artist? And what were some of the easy things that you had to deal with, and what were some of the more difficult things you had to deal with as being both of those roles at the same time?
Right. Yeah. True. Yeah. That's a great question. I mean, so I have now had the opportunity to do both. Like I've been the musical director, not from drumming, where I'm just kind of directing a band where there is another drummer. And that's great, obviously, because you can listen to everything, you can be fully into what's going on, and you can just convey ideas kind of as the music's happening. Obviously, from the kit, there's so much more difficulty because, leading up to a tour or leading up to the rehearsals, as the MD, you have to arrange all the tracks. So you're doing all the arrangements for the live performance. You're making sure the whole band is ready, or you're sending people stems to learn their parts. And then, you're a week until the first rehearsal and you realize you haven't practiced your own parts. So that's definitely tricky because you're so, I usually get so into the arranging part of it that I kind of forget, oh my God, I'm the drummer as well. And then of course in rehearsals, there's some kind of tricky maneuvering. I always have a talkback mic, so there's a microphone beside me, and it kind of sucks because I have to kind of stop everything and stop the tracks and kind of convey everything in the middle of it. But I just make sure that I'm also running tracks, so I just make sure to make my tracks very easy to maneuver around. So just very clear where the bridges are and where the choruses are, so I can just start from wherever I want to. But yeah, it's also amazing being able to record rehearsals, because then anything that I missed because I was in my own head thinking about the drums, every night after rehearsals, I'll go home and I'll listen to the entire recording, and then I get to send notes and send a bunch of notes to myself too, because you kind of have to be your own boss as well by saying these are all the mistakes I made. But as well as kind of telling everybody else kind of where they have to improve. So yeah, I don't know if that answers it, but yeah. Yeah.
Any other questions at the moment?
So thank you all for speaking at this. We're at a jam session, so I guess the question is, what's one tip, or what do you think about, what's your top of mind, like, what do you think about when you're in a jam session? What energy are you bringing to do your best and to be able to listen to everybody? And question goes out to, I guess, anybody or everybody who wants to answer.
We can just pass it back down.
Yeah.
Cool.
I'll take a swoop at it.
There's also another mic right here, so you can keep that one down there and then have this one here.
We just all want to answer, or
Yeah.
You want to start?
Let's snake back down. Mr. Julian, why don't you start, and then we'll go back down to Corey. And you can.
Perfect. Jamming. Jamming is one of my favorite things to do in the whole world. Truly. I've done plenty of jamming with this freaking maestro over here. Jamming. I would say, for me, what I try to accomplish when beginning a jam or like jumping into a jam as a drummer is foundation, is everything. Like I feel like people when they jam, I feel like people when they jam, they always, or like when people jam at home, they usually put on like a drum machine or they do whatever, and I feel like other instruments besides drums always want the drummer to just like play one thing. Pardon my spit, but I feel like that's kind of legit. Like holding down that foundation and holding true to a groove potentially makes the groove funkier than embellishing. Like if you can find the heaviness and the like prosperity in a luscious deep pocket, then everybody can just do whatever they want on top of it. And opening that up to yourself as well, like if you establish something, when you do step out, and when you do take that time to do a little thing, everybody immediately like turns to you because they're like, oh, whoa, we just changed the groove for the first time in 3 minutes. You know? That was sick.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
And I feel like, not to ramble on and on, but I feel like also when you're jamming, you're constantly like, you're kind of searching for like that one repeat, you know, to really have everybody gelled and locked together. And I feel like moving around too much, it kind of takes away from that. So yeah, foundation and fundamental is what I'll say to that.
Yeah.
Yes, I also agree with that completely. I used to be a drummer, or like I used to really like to do a lot of fills, like as a drummer, and when I was a lot younger. And definitely coming to these jams has like made me more realize like that's definitely not important, and it doesn't serve the music. And like you want to be listening and serving what you're listening to, like what fits in here, and definitely like keeping the pocket and just like maintaining that groove is definitely key. And like when I go on, like I can either stick to what's been already like happening from the previous drummer, or I can like maybe sit down for a second and like wait maybe a few seconds and just like, listen and maybe change up the groove, like change the tempo, like change the feeling. That's always exciting to like maybe change it up a little bit when we're in a live jam like this. But like yeah, like to keep that going and like maintain the groove and keep it like locked in is super important. And like just like definitely listen to the musicians. Like if there's a quiet singer, that like tone it down a bit. Like let the singer talk or something. You definitely have to be listening a lot. That's what it's about. So.
Same time.
Yeah, actually.
So basically, just to kind of piggyback on the listening thing, the music has sort of its own direction, and anybody who's played at this jam will, or even like been at the jam, will know this to be true. Like if you hear the piano getting quieter and someone else follow, right? Like follow that vibe, follow the direction that the music is going. But in order to be doing that, you have to be listening. And I think one of the things that stops me from listening is thinking too much. Thinking too much about, like, am I in the pocket? Like, trust yourself, you know? Be confident in your practice and focus on the music, you know? Because the minute you start thinking, like, I'm gonna try to do a paradiddle starting on the end of 4 and it's gonna go across the bar into the next bar, and then everyone's gonna... That it's already passed you by, you know? Maybe you're still playing at the same volume and everybody else is down here, right? And volume.
you should be able to hear what's going on the stage. If you can't hear what's going on the stage, the vocalists, the piano, then how can you respond? How can you listen if you can't hear, right? So making sure that you're not overstepping your sonoric boundary of hearing is one of the things that I like to think about as well.
I would kind of like piggyback off of what everybody's been saying already, and I think that this topic could go on for like hours and hours, but I think the most important thing is really to serve the music like Corey said, and like I think playing as simple as you can to start off is like the most important thing because you want that foundation. Because if you're playing too many like chops or whatever, and sometimes chops can be cool, but like chops all the time is like, I don't know, like I think pocket is over everything else, and I think that should be the thing that should be prioritized when at a jam session, and then like things will happen and unfold like organically. I think it's really about keeping it simple and like being really present with it. I think of like playing music as being a very like almost like a mindfulness thing. Does anybody know what mindfulness is? Like just being really present and like not thinking too hard, because even when not at jam sessions, when I've been playing with an artist, the second I start to think too much and I start to overthink is when I like, that's where I mess up, or like, you know, because when you're thinking too much, that's when you're doing it wrong.
What everybody else said. Said it perfect.
I had a question. Are there any more exciting ways, other than just using a metronome, to work on time? How do you work on getting a good time? I guess using a metronome. Are there any like more fun ways?
I would like to hop on this one. Good time can mean different things depending on what you're playing. If you start playing like a 16th note funk beat, but you're playing with like a trio swing jazz, you might get a couple looks from the people you're playing with because everything's in triplets. I think practicing with recordings as well as metronome stuff is super helpful, because not only do you get the time, like you're trying to match the drummer on the recording, but you also get the context. So you might hear a fill, but learn the fill, but then what happens before it and after it? What are the other musicians doing? Is there like a lead up to it on the guitar? Try to put yourself in the drummer's chair and be like, what did they hear that made them respond that way? And you get the time, you get the context, and you get groove. You get the feeling, you know, that comes with that style of music. So I would say like recordings is a very good one.
Yeah, I'd also be down to say something on this. For anybody at least who makes their own beats or their own productions, that kind of thing, I found it really useful. I mean, I think Click is king always, and I have a lot of fun playing with Click. I think it's like super fun to have an app where you can like kind of take a few beats out and then you get some time without Click. But aside from Click, I really love to just make my own music, to produce something on the computer, and then to take the Click off and just play with that, because then you get to play with music, but there's not something constantly anchoring you, but you still get what you did. Although I guess when you make the music yourself, you really know what to expect. So it's also cool. I mean, if you have friends who make beats, you can tell them to send you some music and take the drums out and play along to that. Could also help you eventually in studios or whatnot, because they're going to be playing with Click, but still you get the music without the drums. So I just feel like, just playing with music where there's no drums without Click is really fun.
I would also say that just playing with people is a great way to develop good time, because I feel like inherently everybody has a good time. Like, I took a lesson with this guy, Lauren Nearing, one time. And he was like, humans are developed to have good time because we have to communicate. Like, we have phrasing in our voice. We have inflection. We have all of these things like built into us. So you kind of just have to like trust that. And if you can find a group of people to who also trust themselves and like trust you enough to open up and have this just like communication of musical ideas, like I feel like that's a really good way to learn too.
I think I just want to also say something about this. I think click is king, and I think that there's so many like cool ways to practice to a click, like putting it on the offbeats, and what David said about like sort of taking out some of the beats and stuff. I find it just to be like a nice challenge a lot of the time, but I think like recording yourself is a big one, because like I think not only like should you place trust in yourself, which is very scary to do, believe me. But like when you're playing with other people, or even when you're practicing, just like record yourself, and like there are even apps for this that like can track like what tempo you're sort of going at and how consistent you are. And I think that's like really helpful. That's been really helpful for me. It's just like, am I slowing down here? Am I like speeding up here? How consistent am I? And just like be consistent with it every day, like that sort of recording thing.
I got a question for all the like touring drummers. What's a couple things that you would recommend to somebody who's just getting into like the serious touring life, as a drummer specifically, that would make their lives easier, something that they may not expect on the tour circuit, with regards to either flying and or taking a bus? Like, what's something that you've experienced in your career so far that have you wish you had maybe known a couple years ago when you started?
I mean, literally every tour is different, but because it depends on the venues and depends on your travel, and it depends on like your capacity, and like that's what makes it so hard, because like there isn't one way to tour. And like I feel like every tour that I've done, it's like, well, just when you thought you were in the groove of it, we're gonna throw this at you, and it just like changes everything. And I'm like, okay, well, now I have to relearn a setup, or you have to like fly with everything, which means you have to take apart the entire rig, patch it, like everything, like put it into different cases, like all this stuff. So like there's all the tech stuff. If you're traveling overseas, there's the different plugs, whatever they're called, the plugs. So that's annoying.
Is that something like, say if you're running like an SBD on stage, like, is that something that you encountered when you head over to Europe? You'd be like, oh shit, this is the wrong plug?
I mean, yeah, I guess. So I think if you have like organized people doing your backline, then you should be good. But if not, you're probably in trouble, and then somebody like David's gonna have to figure it out on the day. Lucky him. But yeah, I mean, it's just, it's you gotta be like good mind and body. That's all I will say. Like literally, there's nothing that is gonna prepare you other than just like being like generally prepared. Don't pack a big suitcase if you're touring. It's literally the most annoying thing, just for everybody and yourself. But I feel like just having a good mind and body is all you can do, because there's literally no way to skin the cat. I think that's a saying. That's my saying. And
just a quick thing about that too. When I went into touring, I didn't realize like how just physically exhausting everything is, because you're like not only are you drumming maybe every night, but you're mentally exhausted. You depend, like if you're not on quite a big tour, you're probably going to be doing some of the loading and unloading yourself, with the team, of course, but still you got to lift some stuff. So just like to keep a good stretching routine is something that I'm still struggling to find, because you don't want to injure yourself. And you know, like my last tour was 6.5 weeks, and we were playing a lot of days. And there was one day where after the show I could feel a little bit of strain in my wrist, and then I'm sure it was fine, but then mentally I start freaking out. Oh my God, my wrist hurts, you know? And then so mentally you think that your wrist hurts more than it does, and you get, I mean, I tend to get into these you know, I don't know, these times where I think that things are worse than they are. So you also got to keep mentally sound. If you meditate or just, you know, take deep breaths. Touring is like a lot on the mental and the physical side of things. So just, I think that's important and also just often kind of looked over. And I definitely did not think about those things before going on tour. Yeah. I'll just take this real quick, if that's cool. Yeah. So on one of my, I had a sprinter tour, which is you're in a sprinter van, so it's kind of a smaller tour. You're doing a lot of driving, so you're sitting down like sometimes 12 hours in one day in a car. And at the end of that tour, I couldn't get out of bed like 3 days after getting home, and so I had sciatica in my back, which is where like a spinal disc gets a little bit removed and pinches your sciatic nerve. And so I was out of commission for like 2.5 months, just could not play because I had to get that fixed. I've also experienced, actually from producing, not from drumming, but I've experienced tendonitis in both wrists. So I have had a bunch of body stuff go on, but I just like, physio is expensive, but if you don't go when you're in like, if you're in desperate need for it, like if you think you can stretch it out and get over it, take a break for a week. If it's still persisting, I can guarantee that the money you put into physio is going to make you money in the future because you can still play. So I think that's what's helped me, and just getting into stretching routines.
Yeah. One of the things, because I switched over to drums in my third year, and at that point I hadn't really studied with anyone. I was just kind of listening to records and figuring it out, which also meant that my technique was like horrible, so bad. Like my teacher got angry when he, like after a year after I switched, I took lessons, and he was like, "No, we're not doing this right now." It was just so tense, and I developed like case of tendonitis in both wrists because of it. And what I had to do was just not play for a bit. I had to step back and then relearn technique, super slow, making sure there's no tension. So putting that work in, maybe if you can even get like a 30-minute session with like a local like drummer and just be like, how's my technique looking? Or even come up to, just someone and ask them how, for any tips on your technique. Or a good thing to do is notice when you're playing and see if there's any tension. And if there is any tension, try to get rid of it. Like just be conscious of your body when you're playing. Like close your eyes and really like try to notice where you're holding. And it's like the prevention game is huge for that. I do yoga with Adrian every day. Shout out to Yoga with Adrian. It's my homegirl.
I think that's it for me too. Like, obviously, like having it and not realizing it is terrible, and having to deal with the consequences is something that nobody wants to go through. So, yeah, like having that mindfulness and just being aware of your body, like, but not even just in drumming or whatever, like in all hours of the day. It's like, where am I carrying all my tension always, and how is this affecting my life, and how am I ruining myself by holding like all this tension in my shoulders or in my jaw or in my, clenching your fist or whatever. So yeah, just keeping an eye out for that. It's great.
Do you have an injury, like a specific injury?
Oh, you're talking to me. Oh, sorry. Personally, no, I've never. No, I just wanted to make it a notable thing for the room that injury can happen, and we're always going to be prone to that.
Honestly, a great question.
Yeah.
I think we're all trying to figure that out. Truly.
Yeah, like it's all so different, like with the ever-changing gigs that we get.
And yeah, just to.
Opportunities.
Oh, sorry, you're still.
Oh,
sorry, you're still talking? No, I'm joking. But yeah, just to piggyback quickly off of what Karah said, or maybe it was Julian, I don't know. But I like all of my injuries have been off the kit, so it really is like you gotta kind of focus on what you're doing all the time. Because when I injured myself off the kit, I couldn't play kit because of those injuries. But yeah, that's it for me. Sorry, Zach, you want to keep going?
I'm just going to touch on quickly, just for Austin and anybody in terms of the touring, just make time for yourself. Like, you're together with people all the time, and it's hard sometimes to find the time, especially on big tours, but like, whether it's just listening to music or like, cool, I have 10 minutes, I'm going to like go outside for a walk and be away from these people just being, what do you mean these people? Easy. When you're together all the time, there's, the tension builds, and that's at least what I found out doing. It's like you get at each other, and sometimes you're like snappy and like, right, I've been with these people for 14 hours a day, every day, and it's not a natural state. You're never really like that anywhere else. And so any of those moments you can find like to carve time up for yourself, like it ultimately helps you and the rest of the tour mission.
I know that most of you guys went to music school or have been doing this for a long time, so it might not be relevant to you guys right now, but I'm sure at some point it might have been to people here that they probably is. But do any of you guys ever struggle with like imposter syndrome, or kind of like feeling like you suck, or like you don't know how to play anything, even though you're all like established in what you're doing?
All the time.
Okay, this is a hard question.
Yeah. No, but I mean, you'll you'll get those feelings. I'm sure everyone here has felt that, like, I'm not good enough to be here, or like I'm not like, or just like many scenarios where you're just like, I don't feel great about this performance or like how I've been playing. But like, again, that's like, you got to kind of get out of that mental state and get out of your head, because like you are your biggest enemy at the end of the day. Like, you will be the most critical on yourself, and like your friends might like be like, oh, blah 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 blah, but you in your head will be like, shit, like I'm screwing up. And I've felt that many times before, but like at the end of the day, like that's like the best way to do that, or to get over that, is to like just like breathe and like realize that like we're all kind of like, all musicians are trying to like figure that out, to be honest. And like sorry, what am I trying to say?
You're on it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's all I gotta say right now. I'm kind of just like stumbling.
Sorry? I do have a second part for this question. So it's very relevant to the first part. So, like, as I guess everyone here knows, the only way to really get over that, I suppose, is to practice drums and like be as much a part of your identity as you can. So, is there any suggestions or like tips of the trade you guys use to see like real progress that the identity piece, because it's like part of your lifestyle, and like what approach do you guys use that kind of helps with that process?
I'll continue. Yeah, I was gonna say definitely, if you're feeling really down, definitely practice. Make yourself feel better by practicing. Play some of your favorite music if that need be. That definitely helps. Obviously, like drumming and like music is like kind of a way of therapy. You know, you're expressing yourself. So like I've had really bad days and I've like wanted to play drums and I did, and I felt a lot better afterwards. And I feel like, I mean, there is music therapy. You know, like people like take that, you know, in university, and they help people who have disorders and whatnot. So like music is really healing, and I find like it could like also make you feel bad too. You know, like, you know, you'll as a musician you'll get down on yourself for your own playing, but like at the end of the day your own playing can help make you feel better too. So like, yeah, playing, practicing, yeah, just always do that if you're feeling down, because it'll make you feel better, definitely.
I think that in terms of your second question about like looking at your progress objectively, I think that it's important to sort of like maybe if you're feeling stuck in something, to remember like really just how far you've come. Like even just looking back to like maybe 3 years ago or whatever, like a year ago or something, you know, and not being too hard on yourself also. I think that even just like in non-music ways to see how far you've come, because like there's just so many pieces to music. Like there's like the mental blocks, and there's like, you know, it's not just about practice, it's about like, you know, getting over things like performance anxiety, like general anxieties, stuff like that. So I think it's just really important to be kind to yourself, and also like look at just how far you've come in general, I guess. Yeah.
I think you said like to get over it you should kind of like identify more with it.
Yeah.
I actually kind of found that was like hurting me personally, because like when COVID hit, I guess I had a drum kit, but I truthfully wouldn't like introduce myself as, hi, I'm Karah, I'm a drummer. I would just say like I'm a musician or an artist or something. It's like, it's not, but at one point I was like so deeply like, I am a drummer. Like there's nothing more to me than this. And like I noticed that it was like stopping me from like wanting to sing. Like I wanted to sing. I just didn't think I could because I'm a drummer. You know what I mean? And people like, when you start to like identify with it and it becomes your like the one thing, it's like you can really disappoint yourself at the same time, you know? Because it's like when COVID hit, there was no touring. Like I couldn't see my bandmates. Like obviously everybody had their own version of that, and like I think it was so like depressing, you know, like for most musicians, and obviously like the rest of the world too. But like I think just like musicians with bands and touring musicians, musicians who are used to like being with other musicians, you know, like that's the whole thing, right? And I think as soon as you like identify with yourself as being that, like when it's taken away from you, like what am I? You know what I mean? And I think that was my like biggest realization in COVID. And like it was just like I literally don't even know who I am. You know what I mean? And I had to rediscover who I was, and that was also really hard. But yeah, I don't know. It's literally imposter syndrome is like always a thing. I think even like the people who are like even deemed the most successful people in the world have it, you know, because it just means you care, and like in a way it's kind of productive because it makes you want to like be better. But I also think people think that, but it's like actually like the opposite of self-compassion. And I just think like, yeah, I don't know, I'm figuring it out. but I get you. I feel that. But I feel like musicians identify too much with their instrument, but that's not who you are. That's just what you do. And it's like so debilitating when it's taken away from you, or when you suck, or when you play a bad show. And it's just like really bad for the mental health if you're going to do it for the rest of your life. That's just my personal opinion, though.
I have sort of a question for everybody. As you get more and more busy being a working musician, and particularly a drummer, who in a lot of cases for people who are living downtown don't have a place to rehearse or something like that, how do you sort of balance the practice that you want to do versus the I need to go out and do and make and jam and make money and, you know, maybe do my day job? How do you balance sort of the two things of I want to be a working musician, but I also need practice to get better at doing that? How do you balance those two things?
So is this like how do you balance life and surviving with making art?
I mean more of like, okay, I gotta go and do this gig Wednesdays, Thursday, Friday nights, but I also want to like practice on this like bird transcription that I'm working on. Like, where do you find the balance in between like, you know, having to make money and go do that, and also like spending the time practicing? What do you guys do particularly that allows you to do both those things? Do you do both those things?
I mean, yeah, I think that you got to just, I mean, I've had to work on my priorities a lot, like what I should prioritize. I did get lucky during the whole pandemic situation, having a kit that I could practice on, and because of the Canadian government actually giving money to people, I was able to just live and practice a whole lot. So that felt amazing. But it also sucked to, like, at the end of every day, if I was practicing for 5 or 6 hours, at the end of the day, I'm like, oh, but I don't have a gig for like a year, you know? It needs to be a good mix though, because then there's times where you're touring for a long time, or you have so many gigs, or stuff, just whatever, even if you have a day job or whatever it is, that you can't get that much practice, like the amount of practice that you envision yourself getting. It's damaging on both ends, where it's like you're either practicing and saying no to gigs, I guess now that there are gigs out there, or you're just practicing for gigs, which happens to me a lot. But I just think you have to prioritize. I find scheduling really helpful. Like, I'll go on Microsoft Word and just be like, okay, I don't want to wake up at 7:30, but I'm going to, because you know what I mean? Then I can practice for an hour on a drum pad at least, you know, because I'm in a building, so I just got an electric kit. Again, I hate electronic kits. I mean, for the most part, I love the SPDs and that kind of stuff, but to practice all the time on one isn't great. But it's just, I had to prioritize having a kit in my house, right? So just priorities, I guess, is what I'm saying.
I'm going to also add to that, because like for a long time, I also haven't had a kit in my own like vicinity, in my living space for quite a long time. So I tend to exactly just like use a pad and just like practice, or like getting a sample pad was a really incredible thing, because like I then like got like a little kick pad or something, and then like created just a really tiny drum set out of that, and that helped me practice a lot. But in terms of like playing a gig or something, and like maybe I don't have that on me and I left it at my actual practice rehearsal space, I'll just kind of like tap on my knees or something, or just kind of like, you know, have my sticks and just like practice on the pad as I'm listening to whatever I need to play for whatever gig. Because like I played gigs where there's like been no rehearsals, and he's just like, oh, you remember those songs, right? I'm like, okay. And those are really fun, and like, because like it really puts you on the spot. But like if you've done your homework, you'll be fine, I find. So yeah.
I think that understand that things come in seasons, and you're always gonna like, you know, maybe at one point you have a lot of gigs. Like I always find over the holidays, that's like when I don't have as many gigs, and like that summertime or springtime is when I have a lot of gigs and tours. But I find that like things will come in seasons, but I think even in the times when you're really busy, there's at least like 5 or 10 minutes where you can just like, if you're not doing anything, or if you're like maybe waiting for something, like to at least keep the chops up, even if you're not always, because life gets really, really busy, and so it's really hard. And understand that sometimes you'll be practicing more, and sometimes you'll be practicing less, but I think ultimately keeping your chops up every day, finding some time, is really, really important, so yeah.
Just have a question. Honestly, even just expanding on what Austin was asking, do you guys have any tips for efficient practice? I've often like asked this to some of the other panels too, but like, do you have anything like specifically that's drum related that you feel allows you to grasp material a bit faster, even for late bloomers that really want to catch up and just become a little bit more proficient with their instrument? Like, what do you feel? What techniques do you do on the kit that help you learn quicker, more efficient practice? Does that make sense?
Okay. One thing whenever I practice is making sure that I'm warmed up properly. Not like, okay, I did paradiddles for like a minute, I'm warmed up now. It's like, no, like there's blood flowing, like I'm kind of, my heart's beating, like whatever. And then I get into the more sort of cerebral stuff, or the things that I find difficult. Just, it can be like, I can't remember where I got this, but it was like 4 minutes of just right hand, and then 4 minutes of just left hand. And I do that with YouTube videos playing. Like, I just watch, and then if there's music in the YouTube video, I'm like, ooh. And then like I go into like some metronome stuff, and then I sort of ramp it up into like whatever I'm working on. And like you'll get into like flows with practice, but like regimenting, like having sections like technique, repertoire, and then fun, and then even like messing around. Like have a section where you just go crazy, like just go off, and have like completely free expression is very valuable. So like regimenting and really making sure that your mind and your especially your hands are warmed up, because you could like throw yourself in an exercise, but if your mind isn't there, and if your hands aren't ready like for it, like as ready as they could be, then it could be the difference of you getting it that session or 2-3 sessions down the line, or whatever, so that's one thing that works for me.
Can I say something? Okay. I think, just like structuring it, like what John said, where it's like there's technique, because technique is like everything. Without technique, like you can't play long term. You'll definitely injure. So like preventative, it's like all about the prevention to avoid getting injuries in the first place. So prioritizing technique, repertoire, and having a little bit of fun at the end. I like to like jam out to something at the end to sort of like reward myself. I also find that I think the key to practicing, in my experience, is having stuff that's familiar to you. So like paradiddles or something, but it's also really, really important to have stuff that's not familiar. Because I remember someone telling me that like, if you're sounding good during practice, that means you're probably doing it wrong, because you're just practicing the same things that you already know. And that can lead to like you sort of plateauing. This is just based off of my own experience, because it's like, I can play this like paradiddle, but it's like, am I really growing if I'm not trying to implement it in creative ways, or I don't know, stuff like that.
What are your guys' thoughts on having your own sound? Like, does it matter to you? Does it not matter to you? I feel like there's a lot of like people saying like what is right, what is wrong, what sounds good, what doesn't sound good. Like, how do you guys become confident in what you think sounds good and like what you want to sound like?
Firstly, immaculate sweater. For those who can't see, it's the Rugrats logo, and it says regrets. Incredible. So
it's my only sweater. I really
finding your own sound, tough. Still ongoing. I think everybody is constantly looking to dig deeper on that. I think you just gotta be confident in what you like and recognize what you like and what you love to listen to, and constantly play that imitation game and be like, I love how Fred White plays and I love how Sheila E. plays. Like, let me try to do this thing and incorporate it into my own playing. And yeah, maybe it doesn't work in every situation, but maybe it does. And maybe the way that you play is just bring something to the table that other people can latch onto and that you can have a conversation with other people with, you know? So.
I think that studying the history of the music that you really, really are into is really, really important. Like understanding, like, you know, which musical figures sort of really influence that music, and like understanding the roots of that music, like where it comes from and everything. I think it's really, really important to do that and do the research. And also just like do a bunch of listening. Imitation game is really important. And I think also just like being really creative in your practice and figure out like sort of like what I said before about like taking like maybe a rudiment and then maybe playing it like in a way where you haven't heard someone else play it, or just like trying to go like above and beyond with like everything in your practice or even when you're jamming.
Just a quick thing on that as well. I think this is where, because we were just talking about practice routines, this is where like the fun section of your practice or like the jam out section of your practice or whatever you want to call it is so important, because you know you're going to practice technique and you're going to practice whatever you practice. At the end of that, you need to be able to kind of use what you've just practiced in your own playing, right? Or the practice just doesn't make any sense. And I think that whatever you practice, because it's your choice, is going to leak into your playing if you try to use it at the end of each day or whatever. And I mean, that helps make your own sound, you know. And then I agree with Julian. I think confidence is key, because I used to think I really loved one drummer, and that meant I can't really, okay, they're so different, so I should just go to what that drummer's doing. But that's just going to make you sound like that drummer, you know. But if you take it from both aspects, or two drummers or three drummers or all the drummers you love, then yeah, it's gonna merge into that sound that is eventually yours, you know. And I think everybody does have their own sound, but it just takes years to realize what that sound is, maybe for yourself. But yeah.
I had a question. I'd be curious to hear what you all have to say. Do you have any musical heroes or music that you felt like changed your life in some way? Some hot recos. Start at that side.
Yeah, definitely. I've had to name like one of the biggest ones. I would say was like listening to King Crimson or something. Like, it was like music I've really never heard before. Where it's like, I mean, like I've listened to prog music, but like I never heard it done that well, and that like with the technique that they all had, it really blew me away at a young age. Like Bill Bruford, who I was really luckily like enough to see him do a clinic before he retired. And like I'm very grateful to have seen that, because like he's retired, you can't see him drum anymore, he won't be doing that. But like I still have many other heroes like of mine, like a new one like Nate Wood. He's like absolutely unreal. I've never seen someone do that before, really, at least to that degree. And like who else? Like JD Beck's pretty incredible. I've been like seeing him a lot, and seeing him grow as a musician is also really interesting. But like I don't know. I have too many, really. I would be sitting here for too long just talking to you about drummers that I love. I'm not gonna name all of them, so I'm gonna pass it down.
Butcher Brown, Corey Fonville from Richmond, Virginia. I see a hand back there. Redefined the sort of the word pocket for me. You go listen to those records. One, they sound so warm and round, and the pocket is always super chunky. Very, very like chunky pocket on those records. Yeah, like, and Corey's drumming is just so, it was so different when I heard it, and it was such a sort of crossroads of jazz, definitely some like gospel type ideas in there, and like it just sounded so like modern and so fresh to me, and it really sort of put a spin on how I was approaching practice and how I wanted to sound in general. So definitely like Butcher Brown, 100%.
I have way too many, so I'm just gonna like just like distill it. What's the word? I don't know. I would say probably James Gadsden with Bill Withers. Yeah. Shoot. Tony Williams for sure. J.D. Beck, Corey Fonville. I'm like just my my brain is just not working right now because there's just so many, you know. I feel like, yeah, my mind's blanking right now.
I'm also panicking because I'm like, I just don't know. The one that I know is too embarrassing because I know every single person in this room is an amazing musician. I just won't say it. Who it is? I just won't.
You gotta do it.
Okay, twist my arm. Buddy Rich. I know. Well, you know what? I just feel like it's the classic and Gene Krupa, but it's only because my grandmother is like she always, I mean, she's still alive. I'm speaking like she's dead, but she is a big fan of the drums, always has been. And then when her granddaughter started playing, she was like, oh my God, I need to show her like all these people that I listen to. And so it was the classics, you know, it was the classic people. And then I learned those songs, and that's when I got into jazz and, you know, was strictly playing like big band jazz, like any kind of like combo stuff. And then I was like introduced, I was like always wanted to play pop music, but this is not the answer to your question. I'm so sorry. I don't know what I'm going on a tangent, but to what you said, I feel like it's the same as my experience, which is like I was taking a lot of inspiration after the whole Gene Krupa, Buddy Rich era of my life, was like taking inspiration from vocalists because I wanted to be a drummer in a band. I knew that you can't be like a jazz drummer in a pop band. You can, but you can't play like a jazz drummer in a pop band. You have to support a vocalist. You have to support a band. So I was just taking a lot of influence from like pop music, I guess, but like specifically the vocalists. And then, yeah, I feel like that was kind of like where I learned to play drums. You know, it was just like taking it from vocalists and stuff. And then another classic, but I gotta say George Daniel from the 1975. I just think he's a brilliant genius. There we go. Anyways. Sorry, I don't know why I passed the mic to you. I guess I'll just keep it in my life.
I would say the person who's definitely been influencing me the most recently has been Bernard Purdie. The guy. Oh my gosh. And the thing that I really, really love about his playing is that he's taking that concept that Lauren told me about how drumming and music is just a conversation, and you can hear him literally putting it into his drumming. Like, if you've seen a video of Bernard Purdie playing, he's playing and he's go. He's singing all of his fills and he's just so joyful about what he's doing. And as he's doing it, I feel like he's able to just bring this natural, like, he's bringing exactly what he hears in his brain, and he's like transcribed it so that he's not speaking, he's playing, but he's playing like he's speaking, you know? And oh my gosh, a record that you can really get into and hear this on is Aretha Franklin's Amazing Grace record, which is top 3 albums for me. And it's Aretha in the 70s playing with Bernard Purdie and Cornell Dupree and not Duck Dunn. Somebody else who's playing bass. I don't know. So hip. But then also a full gospel choir. So it's Aretha being supported so gracefully and so elegantly by all of these top-notch musicians, like in such a soulful, lyrical, like speechful way. Yeah, Bernard Purdie. Also, Prince's drum machine work, pretty nasty.
Yeah, just quickly. So there's a video on YouTube that like really changed a lot for me in high school, which was it's a D'Angelo concert. It's live in the Montreux Jazz Fest. I think it's like 2000 or something. But it was right before Voodoo came out, so he didn't play any of that record, and it's just like all the Brown Sugar record. And like Julian said about jamming, like Questlove just holds it down, and whenever he does anything like out of the ordinary or just any sort of fill, you're like, whoa, what just happened there? Because he hasn't moved in so long, you know, he's just been playing the same thing. And it's kind of like how this jam works out, where they just go from song to song so like fluidly, you know. I don't know if it was all rehearsed, probably not, you know, like they just go from song to song so well, and it's just such a great especially when you're like working on jamming or whatever you're working on. It's just such a good video to watch because they do it so well. Albums that were really important, Miles Smiles, like a jazz album. It's a Miles Davis record. Tony Williams sounds crazy on it, so I definitely recommend it. Also, 4 and More is another one. I'm really into jazz, and Tony Williams is so crazy on that one too. He's like 18. It's one of those things. And Steve Gadd is like, I mean, he's definite pocket king too. Yes.
I think John wanted to.
Yeah. Jay Dilla. Yeah. MF Doom.
Yeah.
Like listening and playing to those records, it'll do wonders for your time and your vibe. You'll become cooler.
What was that record that you mentioned earlier? The one that you mentioned earlier?
Oh, Butcher Brown? Yeah, it's a band.
Okay.
But yeah. Check out all their records.
All right, so we just have time now for just a couple like quick kind of rapid fire questions, rapid fire answers in the next like 5 or 10 minutes. Are there any questions before we go? Yeah.
Yeah. How would you guys go about like working on getting a better groove or like a deeper pocket? What would you guys do to work on that?
Where is the groove?
Just a quick one, just like listening to music, and I mean playing along to it for sure, but just really listening to it has always been the main thing for me for that.
Vocalize what you're playing. Count out loud, tempo, and just try to feel it with your body, and then it'll come out.
Said it perfectly. Unless you guys have something to say.
Play to the same record for like an hour. Also, just like do a bunch of different like fun metronome exercises.
You got 2. Damn. Play the same groove for as long as you can without deviating.
Yeah, basically all of that. I don't have anything to add to that. Yeah.
I wanted to actually mention, I recently heard a thing, Carol Kay said, she said, whatever instrument you play, if you can make a metronome groove, like put a metronome on, and if it sounds like it's moving, you're making sound.
Period.
There's a cool game too. I know you all know it, but for anybody that doesn't know, if you clap perfectly on time with the metronome, it'll actually disappear in like your clap. Like the sound waves will clash, and you won't hear it. So sometimes if you really just want to like click it out, you can clap along and see if you can get it right on.
Yeah, and also practicing with the metronome a little lower in the mix, so you can like make it disappear. I forgot, but I remember.
I just want to touch quickly on two things. What you were saying, how to make your sound. I think part of it is just put yourself in it, like they were saying with the technique, but then listen to something and be like, how does it make you feel? Same way if you hear music and you want to dance, like, just put yourself into that, really. And for imposter syndrome, wherever he went, I appreciate what Karah was saying about not being your instrument, because the imposter syndrome is, that's like deep rooted. That has nothing to do with music or anything you do. That's like mental health and, you know, personal growth. So focus on that, I think, outside of music.
All right, well, give it up for I'm personally just excited to get all these people in a room to talk about music. So thank you all for coming. Thank you all for coming. And we're going to get to jamming pretty soon. So I think everyone's sticking around. So if you have any questions or you want to pick anybody's brain, I'm sure everyone will be cool to just talk about it. So we're going to take a little break. The black chairs are going to go into the corner. And
10-second time.
we are excited to do stuff like this. I think it's fun. I think it's a good way to contrast the chaos of the jam with some